Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Stock Talk. It's Andrew and Austin. Today, we're going to do a little overview, and it's going to be very surface level, but we can't not talk about it. But the collapse and the ongoing problems with Evergrande Group in China, which to many wouldn't be terribly surprising. Some it could be totally shocking. So we'll touch on that a little bit, and then kind of just touch on some of the story. We're going to have to escape some of the ups and downs and volatility. We're going to have to, which is why we need to have a strong mindset and focus in our day. That's so important. But we'll touch on some of the companies that we see moving forward that are doing well, and we have a great long-term macro outlook on. But Austin, tell me what your first initial thoughts when you started seeing this story, which is a couple days old now.
Initial thoughts were, oh my God, there's a very big doom and gloom kind of projections out there that this could have some massive effects on the Chinese market and by extension, our own markets and the markets in Europe as well. But my initial thought, and you can maybe kind of take this with it, the Chinese would never let that happen, right? Like the Chinese government would never let that kind of level of collapse that's being talked about actually happen. That was my first initial thought, anyways.
So this is going to be very because I've seen a lot of news, a lot of stuff, and I haven't had enough time for this to be like an official statement on whatnot. But they've got they're going to miss their first default payment, but apparently, I've heard some rumors that they're going to pay their Chinese debtors first, which would make sense, and then outside ones later. So this is a big deal because we don't have interest rates that are they're ridiculously low. So if you could imagine, if you looked at long-term rates at over decades and decades, it's about 6%. That's not what these people are borrowing at, and this is for real estate, and this is a massive company. Now, I doubt a lot of people would have known this, but you can still search, and you can go on YouTube and you could look at the forgotten cities or empty cities in China. They're whole cities that are empty that they built. And I don't mean just kind of empty. I mean, like they look like New York and they're empty. Yeah. So they've been up to this for quite some time. Once again, I think that I'd seen somewhere like they've got housing for 86 million people that's unused. So this will be an ongoing event that I think people will look back and unpack throughout history and go, how did no one know this was going to happen? And go, well, tons of people have known this was going to happen. It's inevitable at some point. You just roll forward, and hope that it gets sorted out. But yeah, like when you're saying China won't let it happen, they'll do their best for damage control.
Yeah, and
heads will definitely swing. So that's a place where you don't want to commit this kind of crime because it's their punishment is a lot different than in the West. So it's going to be an issue. I mean, that's the thing, because once again, this isn't because, interest rates are rising, but this isn't a big interest rate spike that's caused them to default. They're just defaulting, and they've got about $300 billion worth of debt. Now we've seen, and it's probably higher now. It's probably more than $20 trillion of negative yielding sovereign debt. I mean, it's owning some of this debt right now. It's far beyond junk debt, and you can see this one here is starting to falter, and they miss a default payment. You have to wonder, okay, who owns this? So who all owns parts of this worldwide, and what's the connections? Because I know that people here in Vancouver, and it might be something for us to look into a little bit. Not that we're going to do a huge expose on this because it's not really our thing, but it's of interest. There were lots of articles about money laundering and shadow banking involving Canadian banks lending to Chinese investors that coming over, buying property here, and the massive exposure that they had. This will be interesting to see that, okay, maybe RBC or TD Bank or XYZ, they don't own any of Evergrande Group, but perhaps a lot of these people that are here that brought over a lot of money could have. Who knows? Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see what the rollout effect of this is going to be, what kind of spider webs that goes out into moving forward. I don't think we'll hear too much anytime soon because there's enough distraction out there and no one's going to want to hear this. But in 5 years' time, I'm sure then the movie will come out. But we're going to stick on it and we're going to poke around.
Yeah.
But once again, unless you're really, really at the highest level to have access to information, we're just speculating as to what's going on. And even at best, if you're reading any of the news outlets, you're getting whatever information that wants to get out, unless it's a real journalism, which occasionally you can find. So it is the main reason people are saying the markets have been dropping, because is it the first financial step of this weakening issue that's coming? It isn't the first by far. I mean, there's plenty of bubbles and there's plenty of problems that we've been talking about for a long time, which is why we've been encouraging people to be very wary of where they're putting their money, but also not to be in despair. Is that part of this is that there's going to be a lot of this.
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of negative. There's going to be a ton coming out. And once again, because sometimes we talk about politics, and that doesn't mean because of Biden's in office or no. It wouldn't matter if you had right or left in office right now. There's been a lot of damage done over the decades that sooner or later have to come to terms, and there has to be this great reset. So that's what they're setting up. I mean, and once again, that's probably people saying, "Oh, you're being conspiracy," but I think people at this point would see there has to be something. And if you want to initiate like these passport type things, and you want to have virtual twins where hopefully, ideally, we have control over what information we share, not someone else.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to have these interconnected 5G cities with this cool Internet of Things and with the blockchain and stuff and digital currencies, there's lots of really cool stuff that can happen with that. If you want that, that takes a massive overhaul, not only in energy and the way we use energy, but in the way we bank and the way we interact. It's a huge undertaking, and 98% of the population isn't really that interested in the conversation. I mean, they might have an opinion on it, but they're not really going to do a lot of work and interest. So you have to kind of do it behind the scenes and then roll things out, which, this is my kind of thought and my hope. And nothing ever goes smoothly. So even if you have the best intentions, there's going to be a lot of hiccups. And here we'll recognize some of these issues and we'll look at this event that's occurring. It's not to downplay it. It's serious. But there's more coming, but also to shine a light to go, you don't have to be overwhelmed by this right now, unless you have exposure to it, which I highly doubt anyone that we know would directly, but also to kind of think of, well, who indirectly then?
Yeah, and what are the causes and effects of that change and that shift going to be, and how do we make sure that how do we, as a general kind of population, make sure it's being done in a way that's in our interest rather than in a way that's going to take advantage of entire massive populations? And that kind of ties into the Evergrande thing in China as well. And it's important for people to remember that China doesn't operate the same way that the West, Canada, the United States, Europe operates, right? So their government's motives aren't necessarily based on economic prosperity, the GDP growth, the way that our governments claim to be focused on things. It's about control. And I mean, the main example of that is you can look no further than China kind of putting its boot on the neck of their tech industry to bring it under state control, or their own Jeff Bezos, Jack Ma, who is the CEO and founder of Alibaba, who may or may not have gone missing for 6 months or so. That about a year ago or something like that?
He needed further education.
Sabbatical. I mean, life's stressful. I would like to just hit up a beach for a few months, and maybe not to the same style that he had, but.
Well, I would have. You know what? That was a big news story over here, but I would suggest that happens over here all the time as well. People get into enough level of power where I'm certain you're pulled aside and had a conversation with. Listen, you can make this an easy way, or you can make this a hard way. And if you hit a core and say even if you're PewDiePie, who got that call, if you've got enough of a following, Nicki Minaj, if you've got enough of a following, you're going to get that call. You're going to get the White House press secretary specifically talk about you at a press. Like, she's a pop singer. Like,
oh, I know. Yeah.
Like, if you ruffle the ire of a narrative, or you point to anything like corrupt, you're going to get that over here as well. So, I mean, people kind of say, "Oh, China's so terrible," and it's because it's authoritarian and all that. Well, we're pretty close to authoritarian here right now. And this has been happening for a long time, even before. So once again, this is not a right-left narrative. I think it was just a bit more behind the scenes, back office, boardroom. Like, listen, we're going to fill you in on a few things. Once again, sounds like a cool movie, but we do know these things do happen because people do come out every once in a while and kind of say, listen, I got in trouble for saying this and saying that. And the closer you come to the truth, or the closer you get to something, and you're not allowed to speak about it, you're probably on the right path. Once you try to enforce that people can't research, look into, question things, you're probably pretty close to there's something here that is true, or that's of concern. And if you can go to jail for voicing an opinion on something, and especially if you think you've got some evidence, like, I don't mean just crazy, like someone who's just crazy on the street yelling and stuff, but if you've got some evidence, you go, here, I've got this, and this. It's amazing that you'll see the full force of PR, millions of dollars will be launched at someone like Nicki Minaj very quickly. But anyway, sorry, I interrupted, but it just kind of was a more pop version of what we saw with Jack Ma, where
it is. It's a perfect example of how Western governments are almost playing catch up to China's style of doing things. It's not exactly something I'd personally want to model, but hey, that's why I'm not making decisions. But it'll be the Evergrande thing is important to pay attention to see not only what are the cause and effects going to be. Will there be an impact on our market? Sure, I think there's people selling off who were probably going to sell off anyways, who are using this as an excuse to get out of the market and reposition themselves. That'll happen. And then any kind of major financial event like this, you see people who can use that to, well, it's not going to directly affect me, but I can use it as an excuse to reposition myself, move some money around and stuff like that. But it'll be interesting to pay attention to, and kind of an interesting example for people to learn, all right, this is how China adapts and deals with these situations. Rightly or wrongly, this is how they go about it. This is their way of doing business. You can look back at examples from like HSBC back about 10 years ago to kind of see how China does this as well. But it's an interesting kind of lesson in this is their structure, this is their philosophy, this is their way of doing things.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm not trying to be all doom and gloom about real estate, with, the bubbles we've got going here. And one could look and say, listen, Justin just got back in. He's already flatly said he's going to inflate more. They want to make it easy for first-time buyers to be able to purchase larger homes, more expensive homes, to boost up some values, and also flood the country with more people, because that on paper brings the value up a lot higher. And that's got nothing to do with where they come from. It's just, if you have more people, you give them access to credit, give them access to these funds, let them go buy an asset that can be transferred over a bit better. But once again, you roll that game forward and forward and forward. At some point, they have to produce revenue off of that, and a lot of these are not going to. So we haven't made it all that easy for a lot of actual businesses to run in Canada. So it'll be interesting to see. Hopefully he gets on board with the whole actually green movement and the green energy thing, and encourages mining like vocally. So hopefully that happens. I think he will. I really do. Because there were times whenever he did come out, and I'm talking specifically about Canada right now. And they're going to have support. Look who's buying a lot of real estate, whether it's raw land, or whether it's housing units, it's, BlackRock. And I bring that up because if you look at the Reuters report, is it just this morning? 11 hours ago. So BlackRock and HSBC amongst the largest buyers of Evergrande debt. Yeah. So they're happy to step in. I mean, they're getting it for a great deep discount. And this would be probably part of the conversation we hinted at between Soros and Fink over at BlackRock, kind of saying you're in over your head. kind of but once again, it's not that these players have a level of access of information that is very high level. Let's just put it that way. And they have there's a longer approach, I think, to see here. So we'll see what's happening moving forward. But the one thing I can say now, normally in the past, you didn't really have to worry about politics because it usually just meant current events like, oh, this is my feeling on this and that. And you could have some crossover and but people could get along. But when you're talking about in completely different, fundamental ideological differences, it's a little different to deal with. And I don't believe China's they don't feel any way emboldened that they have to change their tune on anything. No. And if anything else, I would say they're light years ahead charging forward. And I watched an interesting interview as well saying like by far the most powerful person on the planet isn't the US anymore, hasn't been for a while. It is China because a number of factors. Not only are they, the growth rate is incredible. Their army is massive. They're growing out this empire at an alarming rate. Yeah. They use coal at an astonishing rate and amount of energy. They stockpile most of the resources. And Xi Jinping has his own personal army, which is an army within an army. So you're not removing him. Like, it's not going to happen. So people forget that kind of system, it can work.
It has been very effective in the past.
It can work, and especially in difficult times, it can work because your motivation isn't the quote unquote the people. You don't care. They're just they can lose millions, and it's like we got billions. Like it doesn't matter. So that's a very different mindset than someone who is in a more of a democratic type of situation where you generally do care, like to some degree, what one would argue. But you also can't get away with it, But anyways, the Evergrande thing is not going away. And how this unfolds is going to be very interesting. And where it could take months, it could take a year before we see how all this interacts. But once again, it's a challenging time. And we don't want people to be too distraught over this. And on that note, we've talked a lot about DME. We're very confident. And Don Mosher came out yesterday. I think it was yesterday afternoon. He put out. He's the president of Desert Mountain. He put out an own little update to answer some of the questions the best that they can. Once again, so we've had Ellis Report had an awesome one. We did ours with Robert, and then Don Mosher's come out as well. And part of that is because there's, we've said it before, there's only certain things you can put on some of these reports and news flow out. And I'm not trying to be cagey about it, but that's just a fact. And you have to have some trust in the management. And Don Mosher has an incredible career. I have absolute trust in him. Same with Robert. So when I look at not just investing for a trade, but investing in a company, it's you're not only picking up the project, it's the management. And that's critical. It doesn't mean they're always going to be right, but it means that you've kind of hired people that are going to be able to not just deal with all the good, is that they are constantly working behind the scenes, and they don't have to report to you either. Like, they have to report to a board. So there's a process in place where they are constantly thinking, here's a problem, here's a solution. If it's market important, then they'll put out a press release. But there's tons of things that go up and down and sideways in a day-to-day business, especially during COVID, especially during the environment we're in. And you want to make sure you have the level of experience and the dedication. And also, they've hit all these milestones. And yes, there's a pushback because it looks like the time frame's being pushed back because of building out the processing plant. But it's not the end. It isn't the end of the world. Evergrande could be the end of the world for a lot of people and a lot of banks and a lot of things. That could be for sure. Yeah. That could be a Lehman Brothers event. That definitely is heading that way. And that could be an earth-shattering thing. This is not. So once again, we're not the type of group, or the stories we like are specific sectors, specific companies that have this model where it's the management, it's a unique opportunity, there's a supply demand, and mainly people have ignored it. They haven't looked at it. So there's a lot of growth potential. I wanted to highlight that because we talk about it here and there, but it's just good because it ties into all of these things, especially when we run into more challenges that are coming down the line, like we talk about with food shortages, security. We've got Globex. You look at healthcare as well. And I know I'm rambling on a little bit here, but healthcare is going to go through a dramatic change, not only in the US, but in Canada. It already is. I mean, you don't even get to see a doctor here. I haven't seen it. I get to talk to a doctor in a couple of minutes once in a while if I have an issue. So this whole model is changing, and it's tough right now, but come out the other end, I think it's going to be very cool, very interesting. And those companies that are doing telehealth and changing with and looking forward to see how does this all interact with big data, the Internet of Things and everything. Those are the ones that really are going to weather the storm.
Yeah, and it's to kind of tie it back to the DME point you made there. We've seen it in the past with companies where you're in a situation like DME is. Maybe your timeline's been pushed back. Maybe your news hasn't been as good as it could have been, or you wanted it to be, or people wanted it to be. But the encouraging thing to see is that management team is actually doing something about it. They're coming out and combating the story. We've seen it before where companies have kind of not done anything, and that's where it becomes alarming. You're like, hang on, you've got this bad news and no one in the company's talking, and it's like that's not good to see. So you see, everyone from DME is out chatting about it, getting the story out there, saying, hey, look, we're still 4 for 4 on these wells. Yes, the timeline's been pushed back, but everyone's timeline's being pushed back because of COVID and supply shortages and yada yada. So it's important to kind of focus on that management aspect and say, yeah, you know what, this team that we've picked, that we've said, hey, I like what you're doing, is actually going out and continuing to do really good things. Another quick note I'll make while we're recapping some companies that we follow. QU Media is going to have a management update call next week on Thursday. So I know we've got a lot of people who are always interested in QU, always asking what the update there is going to be. Well, there is going to be an update. It's going to come next Thursday. Send Andrew or myself an email, and we will get you guys the Zoom link details for that. We'll post it on our site and our social media as well. But definitely check into that because I'm sure there'll be some really exciting updates. They're going to be covering growth initiatives. They're going to be targeting their U.S. influencer marketing business side of things, and their updated revenue guidance for 2021, which I know is something a lot of people are really interested in hearing. So
I think check that out. Yeah, those are the big ones, the big ones for sure. And if you have a question and you can't go, just send us a message as well. Just say, hey, listen, can you ask this? Can you get that? Yeah, because we'll be watching. There'll probably be a replay too, so we can send it. But just make sure you reach out, send us a, hey, ask this, ask that. Can you send me the link? And we'll do that for sure.
Yeah, happy to do it. Yep.
But yeah, so lots of things happening, and yeah, there's a lot of concern out there. There's tons, and there's a lot of chaos out there. But this is the thing is that when one looks back in history during these times of big struggle, you can thank the heavens, the world, that we're not in a war somewhere. I mean, there are lots of wars happening right now, but we're not in a world war. And generally, when these are type of events that are just world changing, that usually is what happens. We have an event that is very disconcerting for people, but this is a softer event to occur than others in the past. Is it over? No, it's far from over. There's going to be a lot more blood, sweat, and tears to come down the line. But if you position yourself appropriately, you have a very good chance. And if you have a lot of curiosity and you have a lot of interest in finding source data, I don't mean watching someone's opinion on some talk show or going on a chat room and someone just posts something and it's got no data, and I don't mean just if you're just socially engaging with people, but if you really want to know something, then there's a way to go about doing that, and you can do it correctly. A lot of information, like it's not rocket science. It's not hard to find. It's out there. It's not promoted. So it's just, you need to go make sure it's correct and accurate, and then make your own judgment. It's like here, we never say, go do this, go do that. It's just, if someone says, Andrew, your belief in this and this and this, I think is wrong, I just say, well, listen, if it's World Economic Forum stuff, I go, it's not my belief. I'll point you to the website. It says it right here. So, or it's BlackRock. I'll go, no, BlackRock, just, here's the link. It's BlackRock is right on their homepage. So I don't have to worry that it's my opinion, my view, or this or that. No, I'm just simply telling you what someone else is saying in the big scale, the big players, and where they're focused. And, a lot of this electric, future and security and changing in healthcare, all of these things are changing at a huge rate. And it's just, we need to be time sensitive, I guess.
Yeah, well, and it's important to pay attention to the narrative and the correct information that's out there, and spending a little time to focus in on that and learning it and absorbing it will make it's the benefit from that is massive. You know, it's and it's exponential, the kind of growth that you can get off that knowledge when you're kind of ahead of the game. You know a little bit more than the average person out there. You can position yourself a little bit better, and that's what we're constantly trying to do here. So.
Good, great. Well, thanks for catching up. Like, we're going to watch this, you know, it's going to be in the news a lot. You're going to hear a lot about it.
Yes. Yeah.
But just to reiterate, you know, it is interesting that BlackRock is the biggest buyer right now, along with HSBC, with Evergrande, because it's that whole narrative. They're buying a lot of land in Canada. They're buying a lot of property in the US. You know, very interesting, you know, the massive interest they're showing in real estate, and that type of asset class. And of course, raw land, agricultural land with Bill Gates, the largest U.S. farm. Like, I mean, it's very strange times. And if you don't think that that's interesting, and I'm not saying it means this out of that, it's just very interesting what's happening. So keep in tune, reach out to us, have a good day, and we'll talk to you real soon.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll see you guys on Friday. Everyone enjoy the week.